Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for another edition of WOWSA Live with host Ned Denison. Ned?
Hello, everyone. I'm an epic marathon swimmer. I'm the chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. We have two honorees with us today. In addition to Mr. Munatonis, we've got the Channel Swimming Association, which is an honor organization, and Michael P. Reed, MBE. So, Mike, please, first of all, tell us about the CSA.
Well, good afternoon, Ned. Good afternoon, Steve. You just said to me the Channel Swimming Association isn't mentioned very often. We like to think of the Channel Swimming Association as the #1 choice for swimmers to come and swim where they want to swim the channel. We're a non-profit making organisation. None of our revenue is accessible to any privately owned commercial enterprises. All income is applied solely for the benefit of channel swimming, running the association and the membership. Our aims and objectives, we have very clear aims and objectives. Simply put, our primary aim is to provide facilities and to encourage the participation of open water and sea swimming in all its aspects, and in particular to help people to swim the channel. We can trace our history back almost 100 years to December 1926, when Alfred Jonas, who was the On-Secretary of the Webb Memorial Fund, wrote as follows, and I quote, "Means are now being discussed by several men interested in swimming to prevent Captain Webb's fine achievement of swimming the channel from being ruined by artificial means and lack of investigation, and to ensure that the course from England to France shall be the accepted one. It has been decided to form an association, namely the Channel Swimming Association, to draw up a code of rules governing channel swimming." So that was the beginning of the Channel Swimming Association. And since March 1927, English channel swims have been organised and regulated by the Channel Swimming Association. And all swims officially observed and designated by ourselves are recorded in our record book and in our handbook. And the association continued to support swimmers right up until the beginning of the Second World War in 1939. It then took a break for 10 years until 1949, when there was another meeting in Folkestone and the Channel Swimming Association was resurrected. The next big moment, I suppose, was in May 1953. At the annual meeting, the then chairman, Mr. Ernie Marples, reaffirmed the association's long commitment to helping both amateur and professional swimmers, a policy it continued to stand by throughout the many years of other national bodies refusing to allow professional swimmers to compete. Today, I think it would be hard to find a single elite swimmer who could claim to be an amateur. Our constitution allows us the flexibility to be able to make provision for many differing needs of all bona fide swimmers. But our swim rules are very strict and our traditional standards are vigorously upheld. The one place where we now differ from the founding fathers is that we accept France-England crossings. However, in 1993, the French authorities took steps to stop swimming from France, and the last swims were completed in 1996. So that gives you a little bit of history of the Channel Swimming Association, perhaps a bit more than 2 minutes. Sorry about that. And our objectives, as I've basically said, are to provide facilities to encourage the participation of sport in open water and the sea, and in particular to help people swim the channel.
Thanks, Mike. You're no stranger to the channel yourself, and you're no stranger to the CSA. Give us a little bit of background on your marathon swimming and your role in the CSA.
You caught me by surprise there. What I was going to say in answer to your question, which was to introduce myself, was that I'm old. I've been swimming for 65 years, and I've just been stopped from swimming by the coronavirus. What you see in this video, you get in the tin. I look back over 65 years. I've been incredibly fortunate. I've been so lucky. I've made wonderful friends. I've at every stage of my swimming career been supported by wonderful and committed people, without whose help I would never have completed even 5% of what I've achieved. We frequently hear people talking about the loneliness of the long distance swimmer. The only reason that they're lonely is because they've not taken 1 minute to think about the battalion of kind hearts that are making their swim possible. And if by some incredible chance you're one of those people who are really on your own, then you're an idiot and you're risking other people's lives. I've had lots of good fortune, as I said, and I'm delighted that it's all well documented, and I'm sure you'll do the documentation for me. But I've also had my share of bad fortune, and strangely, it's the bad luck that rushes to mind. So you say, cool, what bad luck has he had? I swam for Great Britain, but I never swam for England. They'd held the Bologna competition 1 week before I became England's #1. I've never held a British record. I was beaten to the 800 yards record, literally by 0.1 of a second, by Dickie Campion in 1959, I think it was. I made the Olympic team and I went to Rome, but an injury 5 days prior to the Games meant that I ended up as a reserve in the 4x220 yards team. I've never completed a two-way channel, even though I spent 5 hours doing the last mile on one occasion. I've had many channel successes, but I've also had more than my fair share of unsuccessful attempts. I think it is how we overcome, how we come to terms with the failure that makes us what we are. So ignore the things I've achieved, look at the things I haven't done.
So there are some people who might not actually know who you are. I will help them. You've got 33 successful English Channel solos under your belt. I think you've swum more than 130 10-mile marathons or more in your career. And you've been probably the main person in the CSA in a number of different roles for the past 25, 30 years. That's probably a fair summary of it all.
That's unfair. I can answer that one. I did my first swim in 1969. I fell in love with the channel and channel swimming. And I became a committee member in 1974. I became vice chairman in 1977, and then chairman in 1994. and then president in 2007. So I've been on the board since 1974, 46 years.
I was close. I was close.
So like I said, I'm old.
Mike, one of the most difficult and most controversial topics we have in sport involves performance enhancing drugs, and the CSA has taken an incredibly brave and leadership role in this whole area. Can you give us some of the background of your discussions and kind of end up with what your current practice is?
I suppose we really went about this alone, Ned. It's something that's crept into the association's concern for safety at every level, slowly, and especially over the last 15 years. As our sport has grown in popularity and more swimmers are challenging themselves, we became ever more aware that we needed to ensure that there was a level playing field and a fairness and equality for every participant. With the increasing emphasis on safe and drug-free sport, channel swimmers are reminded that they may well be drug tested at any time whilst they're here, and for anything up to 24 hours after their swim. A drug test failure or a refusal to take a test will almost certainly result in the swim not being ratified. Why do we do tests? We accept that channel swimming is not an ordinary sport, and compared with even running a marathon, channel swimming must be considered as an extreme challenge. These tests have three main functions. We test to maintain our swimmers' health. It's common knowledge that most typically the complications of the substances that are used these days are long-term health problems, such as liver cancers. They can take a long time to manifest themselves. It will be a long time after the channel swim itself. Other organs can also be damaged by heavy doping over long periods of time. Life-threatening complications can appear months, if not years later. It honestly isn't worth it, in our view. We test to prevent unfair competitive advantage. And I must stop at this point because I need a glass of water.
Okay.
So just give me a break for 1 minute while I go and get a glass of water,
Okay.
please. Sorry
No
about
problem
that.
at all. When Mike comes back, one of the things I'm going to ask him about, and he already mentioned this concept of anybody that feels lonely out there is either an idiot or pretty selfish. A swimmer in the English Channel will have their own crew. So it might be their own brother who's looking lovingly at them, obviously encouraging and occasionally worried, that's handing them the feed bottle every 30, 45 or 60 minutes. They're going to have an observer appointed by the association. There's going to be a pilot and there's going to be an assistant pilot. Some of those pilots have been out there for well in excess of 20 years. And that's what the swimmer sees. And one of the questions I'm going to ask Mike is, what are the credentials of the people in the association in the background? But we'll get to that in a minute. Are you back with us, Mike?
Almost. I'm going to suck a cough sleep at the same time. Always the way. So, as I was saying, we test to maintain the swimmer's health for his own good. We test to prevent unfair competitive advantage. We test to preserve and defend the ethics of our sport. We fought very hard to defend the integrity of our sport over 90 years. And we want to keep it as a level playing field for all sportsmen and women who are following in the footsteps of giants. It's easy to forget that less than a year before our founding, Dr. Dorothy Logan had fooled the press into parting with a huge sum of money, and to the public into thinking that she'd swum the channel in record time. In fairness to her, having received the money, she did admit that the exercise had been a complete hoax, and that in actual fact she'd simply swum until she was out of sight of land, and then got in the boat which took her across, and then she got back in the water and finished. I'm sorry about this.
Take your time.
At least I'm not a robot. Inevitably, small organisations such as ours, with a limited budget, has to make compromises on the scale of drug testing and on how and where and when we do it. We ask swimmers to ensure that they remain clean for at least 24 hours after their swim. Not for 1 minute or 1 moment that we suspect our swimmers of taking drugs of any sort, apart from those that they specifically declare on their medical form and which are prescribed by a doctor. There are, of course, a range of drug tests that we can use: urine samples, blood samples, saliva, each in their own way inconvenient, intrusive, complicated, time-consuming. Saliva tests are very efficient and a reliable method of detecting drugs, and are our method of choice. They're the least intrusive and relatively simple to administer, and they've been shown to give a high level of correlation and agreement with the results of blood tests. The test we use is designed to be nice and simple and clean and straightforward for both the tester and the person being tested. It's unique also that it allows the swimmer to add an additional saliva sample to the test if it appears that not enough was taken in the first case. This, when you think about it, is a huge advantage over a urine test, where if you've not produced enough, then you're likely to have a very long wait to get more. So it's convenient, it's easy, and it looks for the most commonly used drugs and drug groups. So that's where we are with drug testing. And up until last year, we tested about 1 in 8 people, maybe 1 in 7.
Mike, one of the things that I think would be very helpful for people is I was explaining that when you're a swimmer in the channel, you've got your own crew, you've got an observer appointed by the association, 2 pilots. If it's the Brickell brothers, they've got 40 plus years of experience each out there. But behind all of them, you've got your CSA committee. Just give people an idea of the people on that committee and their experience in channel swimming. You can use decades if you want as a currency.
Well, I think first of all, our constitution allows us to have 7 honorary vice presidents, and they're chosen from across the world and have a huge depth of knowledge and experience of open water and sea swimming. And their role is to keep the directors on the straight and narrow. We've got the likes of Ted Erickson, who first swam the channel in 1963, I think it was, and was the second person ever to do a 2-way, and also did the Farallone Islands, was the first person ever to do those over in California. We have Joan Metcalf, who has had as many years experience as I have in channel swimming and also in open water swimming, and is a powerhouse. We've got Harry Huffaker, who came over in the 1960s and did many of the, probably all of the Hawaiian swims initially. So there's an idea of the people we've got. We used to have Montserrat Tresserras from Spain, first person to swim from Spain, who helped us enormously. So we've got Ray Cossum from Ireland, did it in 1970. His knowledge of diving and deep sea swimming is unsurpassable. Great source of support and knowledge. And then our constitution allows us to have up to 12 directors. And our role is to run the association prudently and with due diligence, and to do everything possible we can to follow our objectives. And that's our #1 priority. Then we have a worldwide team of international representatives, many of whom are multilingual and have either swum the channel themselves or been deeply involved in channel swims, or observing or coaching or promoting the sport in their own country. As for our credentials, well, you mentioned the pilots. Sorry. Most of them have vast experience of the English Channel. They're primarily fishermen, and they understand the tides, they understand the weather, they understand the conditions, and they are all brilliant at their job. Within the committee, we have longevity combined with old age, an in-depth knowledge of the association, and hopefully a teeny-weeny bit of wisdom. We have youth and impetuosity and hopefully the future. We have international experience in the likes of Peter Van Voren and multilingual expertise, which is vital when you're dealing with the French. We have a well-matched blend of members with enough experience to keep us focused, and as I said earlier, on the straight and narrow. Collective years of experience. I got hooked in '69, so I have over 50 years experience. Our chairman was indoctrinated into channel swimming from the date of his birth, well over 50 years ago. He was actually born while his father was swimming the channel. So he really knows just about everything. We have access to medical advice as and when required, and we're extremely grateful for the support that we receive. We also have access to legal advice as and when required, which hopefully is not too often. Time for a break.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. I want to wish you all the best in your recovery.
Oh,
thank you very much, and thank you very much for your time today.
You don't want any more?
No, we're fine. Yeah, we're fine for now.
Oh, right. I was going to tell you about the whatever it was, the changes. Oh, talk current policy.
That was on the drug testing. I think we've covered it. We're fine.
Oh, right. Okie doke.
Hang on for a chat with Steve and I for a moment when he turns off the recording.